Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next The Promised Neverland manga review. This one is going to be my review for chapter 140 of the manga, and this one is called I'm Here. This is a very interesting and important chapter in terms of, I suppose, where we ultimately get to. I think the big stuff is definitely coming in the next couple of chapters, but we definitely get to the place we've been waiting for, in that by the end of this chapter, Emma is right there in person with the One, the demon god or lord or whatever you want to refer to him as. I think the English dub of the anime, when they got to this point, when they got to the point of having to mention him, I think Krona mentions it, calls him the One. So that's just what I'm going with in terms of the terminology. So either way, the guy whose name is written as like a kind of all these weird kind of squiggles and stuff like that. But where do we start off with this chapter before we get there? Obviously, we're building up to a huge battle. Everyone is kind of on the move somewhere. There's a big kind of time crunch happening in terms of, does the battle happen first? Do demons die first? Does Norman get there first? Like, what happens before something else happens to cause something bigger to happen? That's kind of where we're at the moment. But we start off in Lord Bayon's territory, and we see basically them preparing. We see like a family portrait, you know, to start things off. So we get to meet Bayon's family, including his wife and child. And it's... What I think this works so well is to really get across that the demons are a society, and that as much as like we've focused on them primarily as, oh, they are the things that eat humans, there is much more to them than just that. That is how they sustain themselves and keep themselves intelligent, and obviously there's this structure within their world which allows them to have so many humans to eat, but that not everyone is like utterly complicit in like organizing all of that. So it's nice to see when they highlight just the sort of family nature of the demons here, of just like having Lord Bayon's like child here, you know, just talk and like simple questions, you know, where are you going? And his mother's like, to the royal capital to see off your father. And then we see the other four main, you know, heads of the families. We see what's up in their different territories. Everyone's gathering. There's a very special festival going on. It's November 11th, and it's 3 days until the Tefari. So again, I don't think we've ever got it fully confirmed, but the Tefari is like some sort of special occasion or ritual where I think the idea is that the main event of the Tefari is effectively this like ceremonial meal that is given to the One to signify something. But I unless I'm misremembering something, I don't think we've ever had it like explicitly defined as to the full scope of what the Tefari actually is. So either way, it's a big festival. Everyone seems to be building up stuff, and we get some mentions of what's going on here in terms of like there are lots of preparations for the Tefari in all the different territories here. They were receiving offerings from various places, and that each of the 5 noble families have departed. And also it's noted here, it says that everything with the One's meal is going favorably and is looking to arrive tomorrow. So that's interesting as well, to see what is this special thing that they have for the One. Now, I've already heard a lot of people speculate about, is it going to be Phil? Because obviously the 3 highest grade human characters, Norman, Emma, and Ray, are all accounted for, and there's realistically no way that the other demons are just going to show up with Norman, Ray, or Emma. So given that we haven't caught up with Phil in a while, and Phil is like the leader of the remaining kids from Gracefield House, and they are the highest grade, and he was like I think the oldest of the ones that they left back there, that I think is kind of almost what they're setting up, like, or at least at some point we're going to have to get an update on Phil. Either way, I think the setup for like his meal and what it is going to be interesting. I'm kind of wondering, will it be that, or else they'll double down on that and it will be like everyone from Gracefield House or something like that. And then you sort of ask yourself, like, where's Isabella in all of this? And is she going to turn up and sort of be part of this meal, or has she sort of gone missing somewhere, and might she turn up with a different kind of approach going forward? But either way, we get some interesting kind of conversation here as we kind of go through the kind of the setups. You know, one of the kind of guys organizing things is wondering where Lord Doza is, and they're like, yeah, it's useless to search for him, Lord Pupo. I'm sure that fellow pushed all the hard work onto us and went off to play around somewhere. And they say, Doza's vulgar high-handedness really makes me sick. And it's interesting what Lord Bayon says here, and obviously this is the new Lord Bayon, of course. And he says, but if I'm being honest, I think the same as well. I do believe that Lord Girin was better than him. And the other guy's like, what Lord Bayon, even if you think so, to actually say it out loud. And he goes on to say, I can remember from my childhood, they were beautiful and unselfish. They actually thought of people's well-being back then. To have all that intelligence only to fall to the wild. Why did it have to end up like that? As we then cut to Girin and his people arriving, because obviously that's effectively the big battle that we're going to get, is Girin's forces wanting revenge for them sort of being betrayed in the past, versus obviously all of the stuff that's been happening with the farms has effectively been blamed on other demons, which it's going to fall on them basically when it arrives. That's why the battle's going to happen. But they're setting up something here with the fact that basically Girin used to be probably like in a way one of the best of the demons. Like, he cared about people and stuff like that, and Bayon is aware of that. So I think they're setting up that maybe on the battlefield we might see some sort of a thing between Bayon and Girin, or at the very least, it's not going to, I think, just be some sort of a bloodbath. There's actually going to be some character presented here, and that's what I liked what they're doing here. They're characterizing the demons. They're not just having it be like the villains are all fighting each other, let them all die. But we basically end up with the idea that Girin has sort of his forces have sort of arrived just outside the capital. The battle is going to happen at some stage soon, and then we cut over for the rest of the chapter to Emma and Ray and what they're dealing with here with this kind of cube thing with the black hole. And the description that we get here in the chapter is Ray basically thinking about it. A 4-dimensional hypercube, and inside is a 360-degree spherical black hole. Could this really be a black hole? It's so small, it could also be a wormhole. Ray's like going crazy overthinking this. He has this huge word bubble here of like, in the first place, if this even was a black hole, we would have to be sucked into it, as soon as we approach, because of how high the internal gravity would be. The flow of time would slow down considerably, and so on. He's taking the full scientific approach, even though he doesn't have any way to like directly confirm it's a black hole, but he's just thinking that it is. And Emma's just like, it's okay. The one is definitely past here, and Ray's just like, I guess so. And yeah, that's it. That messy way of thinking won't do us any good. The doubt and fear too. Press on and believe. Let's go. They both hold hands and touch this black hole box. And what happens is that Ray suddenly disappears, and then when he comes to again, he is basically back at the hideout, back at like Norman's hideout. He immediately runs into some of his siblings, including, I think, Anna is there. Nat and Lanny, and he's like, what are you real? What's the time, what's the date, what happened? But it appears as if he was just directly transported from this thing back to the base, effectively. And then in the next page, we see that Emma has made it through. She says, I finally made it, this is it, the day and night. And in the next page, the kind of demon dragon beast with the symbol that Emma has the kind of medallion of comes down, followed by the one in a different form. He looks kind of like older, but you see as he arrives before her, he basically sort of like de-ages. He goes from being sort of an older kind of demon to being like an adult demon to being like a teenage demon to being the little kid who's like floating that she's seen before. And he appears before her, and he says, we meet at last, Emma, as he's kind of holding out, and he has there's these kind of like balls of energy kind of spiraling around him. So there's definitely a magical aspect here because he's floating as well. And I don't think anything in the show, in the manga, has demonstrated that sort of an ability. So there's clearly something magical going on here, especially given that like all this weird science flow of time stuff has been happening. Like the idea that he's floating is obviously that maybe in this world that he believes he can fly based on the whole idea of your mind can alter the world, so he can fly. And Emma just says to him, I made sure to come from the entrance this time. The one, she says his name. And he just says, well, I said so, right? There's nothing yet everything. I knew you'd come here. She asked about Ray, and he just says, it's okay, he went back to his family. That boy wasn't able to make it here. He only had a little bit to go too. He's still being confined, but the walls are in his mind. He could understand things with his head, but he wasn't able to go beyond that. He is the world, and the world is him. That world is his wall. He really had nowhere else to go. In other words, it's more difficult the more you think things through. You must free yourself, free the world. And then he says to her, what a fine mind. You'd seem like you'd be very delicious. And Emma's immediately like, oh, like, almost like, she's so, like, confident, like, she's here in front of him. And he just says something that's like, oh yeah, I'm a demon too, like, he's just about to eat her. But she immediately is like, you know, answers the question of like, you know, what have you come here for? But before we get to that, I do want to talk about what he says about Ray here. It is interesting that this has happened, that Emma and Ray went on this journey, but Emma is the only one who makes it through to the last step. In a way, I like it because it really helps to single out Emma as being the like idealistic one who has just believed in this every step of the way. And Ray has more, his approach is more that like he's gone ahead with this because he's been able to understand things, but he's almost thinking through things so much that he has like a fear if he doesn't get it, whereas Emma just has this utter belief that this will work out, and because of that she is like worthy to be here, whereas he has overthought things to the point like he's over relied on being like knowledgeable about things, and because of that, because he hasn't been as able to just believe, that's why he hasn't made it through. But it's noted here that he was close. He only had a little bit of a way to go. And I suppose that the idea here is it's more going to represent the fact that Ray, despite how much he's grown, is still different than Emma. And I like that. I like that ultimately they're creating this separation between the characters of Ray has grown. He's become sort of more like Emma and very different from the character that we had in like the first arc of the show while they were like escaping and so on. And while he's clearly grown, the idea I suppose is that early Ray wouldn't have been able to make it anywhere near as close as he did to the finish line here, but Ray as he is now nearly made it there. So that's interesting. The point is also made here as like you wonder how far would Norman make it, and you know how far would Norman from the start of the series be compared to Norman as he is now, and you know it's just interesting kind of judging worthy type thing. But anyway, Emma goes to explain what she's here for. And we have like flashbacks to all of the important things for her of like, search for the 7 walls, I'll wait for you. And you see flashes of Mujika, Phil, Norman, you know, Ray. Let's make a future we won't regret. You don't have to worry, so go. The future I want to free all of us cattle children. I don't want to kill the demons, and I won't let Norman go at things alone. And we get the sort of tagline, the kind of marketing tagline, the promised time is now here, as she says confidently to him, I've come to reforge the promise, as she stands in front of the one with his dragon sort of resting in the background. Very, very interesting stuff here. Like, as I said, it's more of a setup chapter here in terms of like, we finally meet him one-on-one, but it's still him as we've seen him before, kind of talking in riddles. The only, I suppose, real new thing being the sort of confirmation of like him being like, in what he says, you'd seem like you'd be very delicious, kind of confirming, you know, that he is still a demon, that Jatafari is this thing where a meal is prepared for him, so he does eat humans, but why is his position above everyone else? Why is he able to sort of be in this seven walls place that transcends like space and time? Why is she going to him to reforge the promise when in a way like the promise as it is now sort of benefits him? Like that's the questions you have about this character going into whatever discussion they're about to have here. Is he going to be okay with whatever terms that Emma wants, of like her being like, okay, well, I want the humans that are alive in this world to be able to be free, to be able to go to the human world, but I also don't want demons to die. And in a way, like that selflessness, I think will probably come across very well. The problem, though, is that he seems to get across the idea that he likes eating humans, and as I think Norman even said, like that's probably going to be your biggest challenge in all of this, is that the demons have become so accustomed to this that it's like, you're telling us that we can never eat our favorite food again, even though like we're I suppose as the viewers are thinking more of it as, you know, humans are sentient beings, not food, whereas they are food to the demons. So, you know, how can you stop that, even if you do have the ability to make demons not need that to eat humans with the whole Mujika blood situation? And then you wonder, like, how does she sort of connect in with the one, in that, like, does he actually need to eat humans? Like, is that what the Tefari is for like to guarantee that he remains as he is, or is he, like Mujika, also able to just persist without actually eating humans, but he has in the past? They're the sort of questions that you have, like, what's the one's backstory in a way? And then, like, is there any relation between him and Mujika? Because, like, you'd probably lean towards the idea that maybe Mujika is his daughter or something like that, and that's why she has, like, magical blood, in the same way that he seems to have, like, a demon dragon, and can float and control this sort of energy stuff going on here. But yeah, it's going to be interesting how they approach this. Like, what does she say to him to start this all off? In that she says here, I want to change the nature of the promise. I assume this means that, like, we probably have to get probably a proper backstory about the original promise and how that came about. Because I think there is a story to be told about how the humans from that time decided to just leave a bunch of humans with the demons so that they could have food. Like, how was that decided? And like, who were those people in human society at the time? Were they just criminals or what? In the same way that, like, Norman, what he's sort of like offering to like others is like, oh yeah, you can have the Ratri clan and use them to like create clones of humans so you can eat forever. Like, Norman is effectively sort of offering the same thing that was the problem with the original promise. So what's, you know, coming next? And, you know, if he agrees to Emma's ideas and the promise, like, what happens? Does he just click his fingers and magically it happens? Like, every demon all of a sudden doesn't need won't devolve or something like that? Like is this just like a sort of political agreement, or is something actually going to happen on the basis of whatever decision that they come to? That's the, like, how much power does this character actually have to accomplish any of this? Because, like, obviously there's this assassination attempt coming up at the Tefari to take out, like, all the lords that we've seen now, potentially by poison, which I think was the setup from a chapter or two ago. There's this big battle that's about to happen. Let's not also forget that probably next chapter we are going to cut back to what's going on with Dawn, Gilda, and Aishi, and figure out, like, what's happening with, like, Hayato and Jin, who have the whole army of, like, Adam kind of clone, the irregulars with him. And they're after, obviously, Sanju and Mujika, who still have to be reintroduced into the story. And another way that I like to keep track of this at times is also that if I have my count correctly, this is 7 of the current batch of 9 chapters, because every volume as it's released of The Promised Neverland has been 9 chapters, and usually the way that it goes is that, you know, they cliffhanger a volume on a pretty big moment. So this will be chapter 7 of volume, I think it's 16 or 17. So next chapter will be the 8th, and then the chapter after that will be the 9th. So that's why I believe the next chapter will probably go on to be more of the Aishi stuff, getting that into a position, and then the chapter, not next week but the week afterwards, that one is probably going to be the one where we get this sort of cliffhanger reveal of like, this is the promise, and here is Sanju and Mujika. They'll probably do a double cliffhanger both sides of the story, and really be like, what we're going into next is the conclusion of this like arc that we're going on here. So anything else to add about this chapter? Just that, yeah, I like that they added a little bit to the one, with him at least getting across some sense of like, he's talking to her normal, but then he sort of has her on edge with the fact that he mentions that he also eats humans. But before that, I suppose the first half of the chapter, I like characterizing Bayon as having a sympathy in the past for what happened to Girin, but also it's seeming like he doesn't exactly know what happened to them. Almost that like the full story of what happened to that clan, he's not aware of. Like he's been lied to about what happened to them. He thinks they just, only to fall to the wild. He thinks that they just, stopped eating well for a while and just they lost their intelligence, when in fact the story, as like Norman and Girin told us, was that they were like betrayed by the lords at the time and forced to become this way. Now maybe that's a translation thing because this isn't the official translation, but it seems like he's not entirely aware that it was effectively previous people in his position that caused that to happen. It seems like there's been a thing where like it's sort of banned to talk about that clan anymore, but that at least presents something going into this final battle, that there are characters at play here. And yeah, the Tefari obviously is being set up, and just more on just seeing the society of the demons, I think is always good to see, to humanize them, and for us as the audience to be like, we care obviously about Emma, Ray, Dawn, Gilda, the human characters, but we also care about Sanju and Mujika, and ultimately we agree with Emma that based on what we now know about the demons, we don't want them to just be wiped out just because of what happened to them. So, where do we get to here? And ultimately you'd have to say that is going to then leave the characters in a position where their enemies are also going to be Norman's kind of lieutenant characters, Zazie and co. They are eventually going to, I think, there's going to be a rift there that happens there, because they are so kind of lost in their anger and hatred of demons that, something is going to go down in all of this there. So you're going to, I think, have demons fighting demons, you're going to have humans fighting humans, humans fighting demons, and it's all going to kick off at some point. How much time on each of those things is kind of hard to tell, because there's so many directions they could go in, because, like I said, what is going to happen with the one talking to Emma? Like, can he just snap his fingers and change things, or is it actually just like a verbal agreement, contract type thing? That's sort of the stuff that we don't really know, because even if he makes a deal and it's all fine, if there's a war going on and he doesn't have that sort of power, how can he just go in there and stop a war from going on? So, they're the questions that we have. But that's been my review for chapter 140 of The Promised Neverland. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on this chapter. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.